there's something. Oh, good bass. Feisty too. All right, there is a little fat one. That is a small female. Got some eggs in her egg sac in there. Hey, this is your Southwest Outdoors Report. We're on Lake Bob Sandlin today, over in Northeast Texas, not far from Dandy Don Meredith's hometown. Turn out the lights. You remember him, except you got to be at least about 40 years old, probably, to even know who Dandy Don is. Anyway, I got off subject. Talking about the pre-spawn today. Going along here, and there is your next key bait for catching them in the pre-spawn. That's a spinner bait. We showed you a lipless rattle and crankbait earlier, and here's your second bait. That's a chartreuse and white 1/2 ounce spinner bait with tandem blades, both willow leaf, got 1 gold and 1 nickel. You have that tied on, you've got a great chance to catch them over about the next 3 weeks to a month. Now let's talk about the pre-spawn. Largemouth bass, the little buck bass, the males will come up first and they'll start fanning out a nest on the bottom of the lake, about the size of a trash can lid, 2-3 feet in diameter. That's the opposite of a white bass. We talked last week about the fact that the white bass female moves up the river first, lays those eggs, and then the male comes in behind her. Here we've got males up shallow, females typically will be hanging out just a little bit deeper. So don't go in too shallow too quickly over the next couple of weeks. Your best chance to catch a big one, 6 to 8 feet of water like we mentioned earlier. Right now, here's Brian Hughes, your Lone Star Lakes in Texas.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's Lone Star Lakes Report, brought to you by Snag Proof Lures. Now it is a great time to go fishing in Texas, primarily because most of the fish species are up very shallow and very accessible. Now a good example of that is Lake Fork, where you'll find the bass in the grass, and you can use a variety of lures to catch these fish. Either a rogue or a Cinco over the top of the grass, a spot or a spinnerbait along the sides, and for big fish, try a Texas rigged lizard or a jig and pig in black blue along the sides of the grass a little bit deeper. Now crappie fishermen, you'll find them very shallow on Cedar Creek and very active. As a matter of fact, I caught one about 13 inches on a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait this week. Now that's not the bait I'd recommend, of course. Use crappie jigs on a long pole, dabble it in about 1 foot of water, and you should be able to catch a limit of Cedar Creek crappie. And finally, Palestine. They've got catfish in the shallows. You'll find them in the backs of the creeks and arms in the muddiest water you can find. Try live bait or your standard catfish formulas, and you should have some good catfishing on Lake Palestine. That's this week's Lone Star Lakes Report, brought to you by Snag Proof Lures. Now let's check in with Mr. Bill Olson. He's on the coast.
Hi folks, this week's report is brought to you by Team TTF, producers of the killer baits like the Trout Killer 2, and the brand new Killer Baby Ray. Speckled trout, redfish, and other coastal game fish can't resist them. Pick some up at your favorite tackle retailer or check them out on the website on the screen. Well, water temperatures continue to increase along the Texas coast. However, one nemesis we have to deal with in the spring is the wind. On some days, you just have to hide from the wind to catch fish or use it to your advantage. Back lakes and marshes are prime spots to fish on windy days. Many times, fishing the windward shoreline in off-colored water will produce some good catches. Another place to hide is along the intercoastal waterway that runs the entire length of Texas. Many have spoil banks that afford protection and lots of grassy shorelines to catch specks, reds, even some flounder. Just keep an eye peeled for barge or other commercial traffic. We also have miles of barrier islands that provide places to beat the wind. Galveston Island, Matagorda Island, St. Joe Island, Mustang and Padre Island, plus there's lots of spoil banks along the middle coast that offer great sandgrass shorelines to fish a topwater lure or a shallow running crankbait. This week, both Saturday and Sunday have a double tide schedule of 2 high and 2 low tides each day. I'm Bill Olson, and I'll see you on the coast.
Hey, before we go to the next commercial break, I want to show you something here in my live well. I've caught about a dozen of these today. These are spotted bass, or Kentucky bass. Now, it's been about 4 or 5 years since I've been here, and the population of these spots has exploded in Bob Sandlin. I didn't used to catch these here when I used to fish here growing up and earlier on my outdoor trail show. But today I've caught about a dozen of these nice spots, about 1.25 pounds to 1.5 pounds each. You could probably do real well concentrating with finesse tackle off points and catching a lot of these spots. I caught these up in the coves while I was bass fishing today around rocks and smooth banks. Well, stay with us. Coming up next, Gary Dollahan has your Sooner beat, and I'll have your Lawrence Hot Lake of the Week. It is big speckled trout time on the Texas Gulf Coast. Away you go, boys.
The Southwest Outdoors Report, powered by your Texas Chevy dealers, is brought to you by Nitro Performance Bass Boats. Fish your best in a Nitro. By Strand, the standard of dependability. By Costa Sunglasses, see what's out there. And by Motor Guide, never stop.